Welcome to Deep Dive, where we take relevant topics and issues for everyday people and offer an honest, thoughtful perspective in hopes to encourage and inspire you to look beyond the surface, to better understand one another, take a stand for each other, and promote higher level thinking for better outcomes. My name is John Crute, and today's topic is living your life intentionally, right? To live your life intentionally, this is very important. And one of the things when it comes to living your life intentionally is to overcome fears, right? Sometimes we have all kinds of different things that can block our minds, to block our spirit, whatever you're into, right? That can keep us make excuses for why we don't actually see through what our goals are, right? So it's hard enough just to even for some people just to get up and set a goal. So once you set a goal, then it's achieving the goal. But sometimes we set these goals, and whether you set goals that are just ginormous, right? And just trying to, obviously we have long term goals and we have our short term goals, right? And so we have to sometimes take small baby steps and we build up. When we don't have the natural organic habits that perhaps we should have had, like back in school, I didn't have the best study habits in the world, right? I didn't have, certain techniques and things like that. And some people were better at it than I was, right? I had my method and it took way longer. And some things I've done in life wasn't the most efficient in the world. But it's never too late to learn. That's the good part, right? So here we are. So living your life intentionally. To go a step further, to live your life fearlessly intentional, right? And a lot of us, we have different kinds of fears that block us sometimes from our goals, from our dreams, from the vision that we have. And we're not willing to step across that line, that border, right? To acquire that skill that we need, right? So, in the world, we have different countries that have different types of products. If I want to eat a certain product and say it was pineapples and pineapples didn't grow where I'm from, I'm going to need to cross those boundaries and reach out to whatever country or state and negotiate some kind of arrangement to be able to have pineapples that I can bring back and enjoy and take pleasure in. So, some of the fruits of our labor that we want to be able to enjoy and appreciate the fruit that we want to taste or learn how to cultivate in our own lives, we're going to need to be able to overcome those fears and to also be able to accept the fact that, well, you have to go a step beyond just like, let's say you do get up and you say, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go do this thing. Sometimes we set our minds, we're so used to and programmed to have expectations that the moment that something doesn't go according to what we had our one bright moment where we had a game plan and it didn't happen. Some people just quit and go right back to their default. And the reason you go back to your default is because that's what you've done the longest. And so that's where that work kicks in and you have to say, okay, well, you know, you set a plan, you pursue it. It doesn't mean that your game plan was wrong or was bad, but there are other variables in the world that sometimes can work against you. That doesn't mean that you have a bad plan, right? So there's lots of things that we need to be working on, just like when we fall behind in school and it makes things a lot more complicated later on when there's something that you should have learned 5, 10 years ago and you didn't learn it. So now you're the behind student, right? So it's our responsibility to catch up, basically. It's never too late for any of us, but we got to sit there and we got to be willing to put in the work. Whatever the length of time that we went where we didn't do what we needed to do, all right, we need to be willing to commit the time that it takes to build that credit back up. So be intentional about your goals. If it's to lose weight and you say, hey, I'm going to start working out on Monday, don't set an unrealistic goal to say, hey, I'm trying to, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to hit it hard. You go and you pour everything into that one session and you're so sore like the next day or the day after that you're just like, it just makes you want to quit because you haven't even trained your mind to even build up to dealing with that, right? And so you start incrementally. It's more about psychologically getting yourself to change your patterns, right? So you start changing those patterns. You start doing little things different, whether it's to start reading a book and you're like, hey, I hate reading, and you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to read 5 pages. You know what? I'm going to set a timer on my watch or my phone, and I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes and I'm going to go do this. Some of us, even as parents, I'm a parent of 3, and some of us as parents, you can sit there and tell your kid to do something that you don't even practice doing. And the reality is your kids are going to observe everything you do. In life, there are people that even aren't our kids that are going to watch and observe the things that we do and how we carry ourselves. We can choose to reject that responsibility, or we can choose to embrace that responsibility, right? To be accountable for ourselves, to understand that things aren't always going to go according to plan, but that doesn't mean to stray off track from the plan, right? Short of something, some new information that you have to make an adjustment, because we do, as the captain of our ship, we have to be able to make adjustments for the weather, right? And so being intentional, no matter what, your goal is here and you are determined you're going to get there, right? You have to be responsible for yourself. You have to get over all these emotions and storms and things that happen in your mind and the pressures of life to be able to still achieve and get to that plan, to get through, follow the plan, and get there, right? Sometimes you got passengers. Some of us had a hard enough time just by ourselves. Lots of us got passengers along this with this journey and this trip. So depending on what you're doing, just like if you're running an organization, like you have to find that energy, that motivation on a routine basis. You have to learn yourself. You have to learn others. You have to learn like all these different patterns of things. And lots of people out here want to quit. They're not intentional about trying to learn, to try to understand another side to some things. And some people are just stubborn, right? So there's so many different factors that can be gotten into. But to keep things focused, this is about being intentional, fearlessly intentional, willing to overcome your fears. One of my favorite mantras was learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I love that. And that's how I've been. I think I started really just practicing that in my mind and burying it into my subconscious since from like maybe 2013, right? And probably like even before that was just before I even started actually saying it out loud. I was already in practice due to things that were just happening in life, and you just learn to push yourself through things. My personality naturally, I consider myself more of an introvert. My kids may say something different. They think I'm more of an extrovert. I go out, people know me sometimes, and they're like, "Hey, John," and they're like, "See, Daddy, you know everybody." And the reality is, I really feel like I'm more of an introvert, but I do stretch myself because there are extrovert tendencies that I respect and admire, and so I may not naturally gravitate to being certain things, doing certain things, but I see the benefits. And so if you can have the foresight to see the benefits of certain things, it may not be natural for us because maybe we weren't raised in that environment. This wasn't taught to us, whatever it may be. But it doesn't mean that we can't have an affinity for it, appreciation for it, and actually learn how to do that. I'm not from some other country, but I can learn how to cook some of the dishes from there, right? I can learn to find the taste and to understand like what is it about some of those different dishes. Maybe not my favorite, but we are all capable to change. And so change isn't just associated with the deeper, darker, harder parts of us. Change is a habit that's built through all kinds of different things in our lives that we have opportunities to make changes and adjustments to every day. And it all comes together like little cogs inside of a whole system. And before long, we may not necessarily realize it, but before long, we'll find it a lot easier to make the adjustments that we need to make that support us being intentional to achieve the goals that we wanted to achieve. So that's all we got for today's show. And I appreciate y'all joining today. And like, subscribe, follow. All right. And I'll let y'all later. Peace.